Welcome to Your World, a program sponsored by the Office of International Studies and Programs about whatever is international at Central. And today we're going to be talking about Mexico, specifically about opportunities for Central students to learn about Mexican life and culture, and opportunities for two CW faculty members to enhance their research experience in Mexico. And with me today are the two faculty members who led the most recent program, Mike Ervin, who's professor of history as well as director of the Latino and Latin American Studies program, and Bill Wood, professor of anthropology. So welcome to Your World.
Thank you.
And Mike, why don't we start with you and talk a little bit about maybe your research, and then Bill can talk about his, and how that led you to create this opportunity for Central students.
Sure. As a historian of Mexico, my research focuses on the early 20th century. I look at agriculture and agrarian reform after the Mexican Revolution of 1910. And so a lot of the materials associated with our study abroad program, called Many Mexicos, this time around, this is the second time that we did it over spring break of 2008, was focused on questions of culture and environment, a cultural and environmental history of Mexico. And so issues of research, certainly agriculture, agrarian reform, were connected with the study abroad program that we led over spring break, especially issues tied to the environment.
And Bill, your research?
Well, since the late 1980s, my research has been focused on Oaxaca, Mexico. It's a state in southern Mexico, and specifically on issues of globalization and international connections between communities in this small state, well, large state actually, in southern Mexico. First through a research project focused on handcrafts and textile production in the central valleys of Mexico, and more recently, over about the last 2.5 to 3 years, focused on an ecotourism area along the Pacific coast of Oaxaca. And in particular on a mangrove reforestation project, and also on a coral reef management project on the coast down there.
So who were the students that you recruited for this? Were they students who were in your classes and interested in your research, or Spanish majors? Who were they?
The students we get was a really pretty impressive cross-section of a lot of interests. The class was offered as a 3-credit class in 4 different fields. Students could take it as a history class, as an anthropology class, as a Latino and Latin American Studies class, as well as an environmental studies class. So we had historians, we had anthropologists, we even had the executive assistant to the president, Libby Street, and her husband, the psychology professor, Warren Street, as participants on our program. So it really is open to anybody and everybody interested in studying things related to Mexico. So
Did they have to have some background?
No background necessary, just an interest, a love for Mexico and Mexican things.
And they didn't have to have some knowledge, a working knowledge of the language?
They did not. They did not.
So how many students went with you in this most recent program?
Were there 10, including Libby and Warren?
There were.
Yes.
And how long were you there?
It was an 11-day program. We spent the first 5 nights in Oaxaca City, in the capital city of the state of Oaxaca, and we utilized the capital city as a kind of base to study a lot of different aspects of cultural environmental history. And then we spent 5 more nights in and along the Pacific coast of Oaxaca, using the small tourist beach site called Zipolite as a launching pad for then studying similar things along the coast.
So did you actually teach some classes or some seminars for these 10 students, as well as guide them to the various places you were going?
Yeah, each day started with a seminar-style discussion that focused on a particular reading that was focused thematically on the activities for the day. For example, on one day we went out to one of the villages where I've done research in the past and have written about textile production and the connections in this small village in southern Mexico to international circuits for ethnic art. And so the reading for that day focused on this village and on the issue of international connections in global ethnic art markets. We had a discussion on the kinds of impacts that's having on people's workshops in this village, and then we traveled out for the day for a weaving and dyeing demonstration, a meal with a family, and a longer, more sustained interaction with folks that are engaged in that kind of
Well,
work.
it sounds like you had to do quite a bit of planning, pre-planning. When did you start?
Well,
working
this spring break trip in '08 was the second time that I had led a program to Mexico. I had led an initial program with a geographer, Anthony Abbott, to not only Oaxaca City but to Mexico City. And so that was in 2005. And so 2008 was adding to an already a first experience that I had had in the field. So a lot of the planning was in part replicating some of what we had done the first time around. But what was interesting about the second one was that this one was much more focused on questions of the environment and questions specifically associated with Professor Wood's expertise. And so, yes, in a lot of ways, this was new planning that we had to carry out, planning that Bill had all the contacts for because of his research in the field.
So you had to contact a lot of the people that you knew in Mexico, that you'd worked with or done research with to set all of this up for this.
Right. No, I actually had some research funds that I used for a trip over the holiday break in January and December. And I took 3 days out of my research work to firm up connections for drivers, meals, locations for excursions and those kinds of things over that trip. So I took some time out of a research junket, basically,
so it must have taken you at least
do that.
several months, I would think, right, of planning.
Absolutely.
What kind of feedback did you get from the I'll call them students, even though you did have some people who were not, strictly speaking, students.
Right.
What kind of feedback about the experiences they had on the seminars?
Wonderful feedback, I think. Because it was the second time, I think, although the first time around it ran pretty well in terms of the planning, but this time around I felt like it was a much more well-oiled machine in the field, making the plans prior to getting there. And so I think the students had the sense that it was very well planned. They didn't have to worry about the basics of getting around. Everything was kind of timed well, plans made, people picked us up at the right time to take us to the correct location, that sort of a thing.
Food,
so
lodging, all of it was included, everything was
Everything.
included?
So they could focus on the learning. And I think that's really what this program is about. And Bill and I are talking about taking another trip, a similar trip to Oaxaca in the near future. Because I think what this trip gives students is a vision of Mexico that they're not going to get on their own. This is not your basic tourist experience in Mexico where you visit the big museums, the cathedrals, and the like, all the regular tourist sites of Mexico. This was a much more guided tour of issues related specifically to cultural and environmental history, which meant going to see a cochineal farm, for example, where Mexican entrepreneurs are trying to save the red dye that goes to the heart of understanding commodity production and markets in Mexican history.
Can you explain a little bit more about what the cochineal is?
Yeah, it's an insect that's parasitic to the nopal, or prickly pear cactus, as we call them in the U.S. It was a major part of the colonial economy of Mexico. There was, it's a great source of natural red dye, and before Germans invented chemical red dyes in the mid-1800s, it was the best source worldwide and a huge part of the colonial economy. And there are folks in Mexico that, as a part of the sustainability move, the move towards green products, are trying to reinvigorate this industry, this cottage industry, really, in Oaxaca. We went to a coffee plantation as well. Talk about off the beaten track. About an hour and a half up a very twisty, turny road, way up into the mountains in an area of Oaxaca where not many people get. We took our students there. They got to see how a coffee plantation operates, got to learn something about free trade and the emerging free trade markets, or sorry, open trade markets in coffee in southern Mexico. A great experience for the students.
So you must have also, just aside from, must have had some pretty good coffee to drink.
Always in Oaxaca.
Yeah, in
Absolutely,
Oaxaca?
yeah.
Chocolate as well. Chocolate comes from trees. Unlike money, chocolate does grow on trees, and they're indigenous to that part of southern Mexico. So the Swiss did not invent chocolate. Mexicans did, and we got to take them to chocolate making places, and they got to see real chocolate trees in the jungles of southern Mexico.
Did the students tell you anything they would like to see included in the future for themselves if they, want another program, or that they think should be included for future participants?
As far as suggestions for the future, the biggest that came out of the comments from the students, I think, was more time. Because we packed so much, and this is the difficulty of a spring break trip when we only have 10 or 11 days maximum to do this. Because we had so many sites to see, because we had so many connections, especially through Dr. Wood's connections, we really packed every day full of events, and I think students would have liked to have seen a similar amount of things. I don't think there was any suggestion of something else they would have liked to seen. It was more, they would have liked more time to digest the extraordinary amount of material that they were exposed to in a very short period of time.
So what are your hopes for the next program, or if you're even thinking beyond that for the future that you'd like to, maybe a longer program if your schedules allow it? Any other ideas about what you'd like to see included or have the program focus
We've talked about that some, actually. One of the things that we've talked about is Oaxaca is an incredible place, culturally and in terms of the environment. It's actually located at the point where the North American continental plate bumps right into the Central American plates. And as a consequence, for example, the state of Oaxaca, one of 31, I think, states in Mexico, has more biological diversity in terms of bird species than the entire United States has. It's an incredibly diverse and interesting place. It has some of the few remaining cloud forests in North America. And we just happen to have to breeze through the cloud forests on a drive between the Central Valley and the coast, and it would be wonderful to be able to spend more time in the cloud forests exploring conservation issues and issues of biological diversity in this very endangered habitat.
You think you might attract more students from the biology area, perhaps, if that became a major part of one of the programs?
Yeah, perhaps. I think it would be more about enhancing and diversifying the focus on biological issues. We focused on biology on the coast with our trips to a mangrove reforestation project that was focusing on turtle nesting and habitat, crocodile issues of North American crocodiles being endangered. We also had a focus on coral reefs. This area of Oaxaca has some of the best, largest, most diverse coral reefs on the Pacific coast of the Western Hemisphere. So we had all kinds of opportunities.
So it sounds like maybe if one of you can't go in the future, you get one of your colleagues from the biology department to
Absolutely, and we actually have the good fortune. Yeah. We have the good fortune at Central of having two biologists, Dan Beck and Chris Ernest, who have a lot of experience in Mexico. So one of the things that Bill and I were talking about was about expanding the program either over spring break or expanding it over summer to have more time in order to include a much more serious focus on biological issues, because Professors Beck and Ernest have tremendous expertise in this area, and they have brought a great deal of speakers actually from Mexico, exposing their students, not only bringing Mexican speakers here, but they've led study abroad before in Michoacan, a state nearby to the west of Oaxaca.
It seems interesting what a challenge would be if the focus is for some students to expose them to the culture of Mexico, yet having an anthropological or biological focus. I wonder how the students who are more interested in the culture per se.
I think students get a great deal out of a course that focuses on those two things simultaneously. One of the interesting things about conservation issues is they require an orientation in understanding them that's both cultural and biological. You have to understand the ecology of the environments that are threatened, but the threat is usually comes from people, and it usually has social origins. So a focus on the cultural issues and the historical origin of conservation issues is equally important to the biological, understanding the ecological systems. And that was the strength of this program, is a focus on those two things simultaneously.
In fact, I would add that some of the most interesting research that's being done these days in the area of tropical commodity production and the like, work that focuses on linking processes of production in the tropics across Latin America, across the world, with markets of consumption within the United States and the North Atlantic. focuses actually and bridges this gap between social, human, historical factors and biological and issues of pathogens and the like. I'll just mention one book very briefly, John Solori's Banana Cultures, that focuses on banana production in a country in the north coast of Honduras, where he looks at pathogens, where he looks at pests and diseases that come with banana production on Honduras's north coast as an agent in human history. And I think this connection between the cultural and the biological, I think, is fascinating. The sky's the limit in terms of the research, I think, that's available for students to get engaged in future careers.
Well, I think it's an amazing opportunity for students in all these different areas to be able to go with you and with your expertise to learn about all of the culture, the biology, the anthropology of Mexico. It really sounds fascinating. And I really appreciate you coming here today to talk a little bit about it. And maybe some students will watch the show and get excited and contact you about the next program that you might do, which would be next spring break possibly?
We're in planning processes. Whether it's going to be a spring break or a summer class, we're not sure, but we'll be certain to get the word out as early and as often as possible, because the more participants we have, truly, the merrier. It makes for a much better experience.
Okay, well, Mike and Bill, thanks so much for coming here today to share your experiences with me and with our viewers.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Welcome to the CW Youth Study Abroad Fair. We're all here today to talk about study abroad and promote study abroad at Central Washington University. We're here to offer international experiences for Central students. Today at the fair we have lots of different providers that Central Washington works with, such as AIFS, CIEE, or ISA. We also have OISP, we also have the UESL program, and other on-campus services such as financial aid, career services. We even have the U.S. Passport Office here today.
Well, my name is Ray Bates. I'm one of the study abroad advisors here at Central, and I actually coordinate a couple programs. One of the programs I coordinate is the National Student Exchange. It actually enables Central students to actually spend a half year or a full year at another U.S. university, and then they can transfer those credits back here at Central. So it's a great way for students who maybe want to be a marine biologist to go maybe to Hawaii or to Florida for a semester or quarter system or for a year. I also coordinate all of our Japanese exchange programs, so I work with all the Central students who are actually going to our 5 partner schools in Japan, and we actually have about 7 students leaving here in a few weeks to head off to their year-long exchange programs in Japan. We're really trying to really increase the number of students here at Central who take advantage of these great opportunities. It's a great time to do it while you're in college because it's a very affordable way to go abroad, and it's also a great way to enhance your education here at Central.
CIEE stands for the Council on International Educational Exchanges. We're a not-for-profit organization founded in 1947. We have 118 study abroad programs in 40 countries, open to all majors that are semester long or even summer programs as well. There's a wide variety of language abilities taken. We have volunteer opportunities and internship opportunities and a really sort of broad range of program models as well, from a science, environmental studies, field-based program in Costa Rica to directly enrolling in university courses side by side with other students in Brazil, for example.
Some of the programs that we run here are programs to Argentina and Chile. Our Argentina program is available to anybody regardless of the level of language. We also have some programs to Australia and New Zealand where students will generally go for a semester. All of them are very popular.
Hi, my name's Mark and I'm here from AHA International. We're a study abroad program provider that works with several universities, including Central Washington University. Our programs have site directors and visiting faculty from a U.S. campus. For example, Dr. Scheffler is from the English department here and will be teaching in our program in Morelia in spring of 2010. Most of the courses are taught in English, with the exception of the local language, which is taught in that. And then our programs have a site director and support staff there for the students. The students come from all over the country, so not just from Central Washington. Students can also take courses with students if they have the language level for the local language.
I'm Dr. Christopher Shedler. I'm a professor in the English department, and I'm leading a course in Morelia in spring 2010. And I'm offering 2 courses. One is on Chicano writers who are writing about Mexico, and another is about Anglo-American and European writers who traveled in Mexico and wrote fiction and travel writing. So this would be a good opportunity for students in English and anthropology, sociology, Chicano, Latin American studies to get some experience in Mexico and to learn about the different ways that travelers and writers have written and represented Mexico.
I'm Larry Laffrey, Director of Study Abroad at Central. Started here in July of 2008, and this is our second Study Abroad fair of the academic year. We decided we wanted to have both a fall and a spring fair, showcasing all of our programs here in the Study Abroad and Exchanges program. This has been a core offering in Central Washington for almost 20 years. Central came into this organization in 1990, and we're one of 280 universities around the world who cooperate in sending students to each other. We're very excited about the upcoming academic year because we'll probably have about 30 students from Central going out all over the world. They're doing everything from summer programs in Japan to a full year in Sweden. We've got science majors going to Scandinavia. We've got a nutrition major headed to Norway to do molecular biology. we get to exchange students with literally a couple hundred universities around the world. And our students benefit in a number of ways. One very obvious one is that they get to pay a program fee which is based on what they pay at Central Washington University. So we look at their tuition, their room and board here at Central. The students will pay a fee based on that, and then they go off to wherever they're going, to Sweden, to Norway, to Argentina, anywhere in the system. On an ISEP exchange, our students will pay the same amount of money. The other side, where we benefit as an institution from this enormously, is that we get to then host students from a variety of countries that are also part of this network.
And thank you for being with us today, and I hope you'll tune in next time for Your World.